if everybody who is here could comment on the Wetlands group or on the Facebooks to let me know that I have students, that would be great. I'm going to give everybody a few minutes to log on since I was late due to technical difficulties. Yes, Kelly, you are here. But who else is here? Yay! It's good to see you, Trista. Hey, Daddy. Okay, we're just going to give it a couple more minutes. Otherwise, it might just be me and you two. It's here. Okay. So on the thing, you guys can see there is a handout. Oh, thank you, Pix. Okay. All right, does everybody have the handout? Yes, no, maybe. Mm-hmm. So the handout tells you pretty much everything that you need to know, but I'm going to go through it and show you some of the tools that you would need to do arts and sciences project like this. We should probably start with introductions though. Okay, so I'm Linden. I'm from the CK originally. I'm a Knight of the Serpent, Flame, and Crown. And I'm also a Laurel in the SCA for Scribal and Clothing Arts. The class that I'm going to teach you guys today is essentially the same class that I teach at SCA when I'm starting people to make original scrolls. So it is a very sort of period-based style. And that doesn't mean that making scrolls a different way is invalid. Every way that you show your affection and love to people through award making, and you honor their service and their sacrifices for the game, that's valid. You can do it digitally, you can do it in crayon, you can do it on stone or leather or however you want to do it. This is just one way, and it's cool to me, and it's the way that I like to do it, but it is not every way. All right, cool. I'm going to have a lot of trouble reading the comments, so if you have questions, please be patient with me. And I'm just going to start going through stuff, okay? So if you open the handout on your page, it's got like an introduction and stuff. And so a lot of people get nervous about presenting award scrolls as like, you don't want to start out and your first scroll is for someone's knighting. That's intimidating. There are lots of other ways that you can start doing scrolls in AmpGuard. You can do them as gifts or as like invitations to events. You can thank someone personally for their service as a form of largesse by giving like a calligraphied piece to them, like a letter of thanks. You can make declarations of war. You can do cool RP things. You can do all kinds of stuff. And you should also definitely ask your local monarchs about what you can do for them, because odds are they've got someone they want to honor, and it would be really cool if someone stepped up to do a personally made scroll for them. A good resource for AmpGuard scrolls on the web is the AmpGuard Scribes Guild, which is run by my former squire, Lona Two Trees. It is a good collection of scribes from everywhere where you can ask questions and get good information. All right, so I just talked about getting your feet wet. Now we gotta talk about the stuff you need if you wanna build a scribble box. Now I say scribble box because mostly they are in boxes. Mine is this old sewing box actually. I recommend a hard-sided box for carrying your stuff in instead of like a soft one because you don't want everything to get all squished and messed up. And having one like this makes it a lot easier to carry with you if you're going to do Scribble at an event or just to keep it, you know, all in one place. You'll have to excuse Jesus. I was working on him while we were doing our stuff. So you've got yourself a box or a basket or whatever. Now you need stuff to make scrolls with. Well, most scrolls of the type I make are made on watercolor paper. This Fabrino is just fine. It's not the best. Fabrino's maker, Canson, also makes a watercolor paper called Arches. And the hot press watercolor paper from Arches is the very, very best. It comes in all kinds of sizes. It's very pricey, but if you want to do something that's really nice, I highly recommend it. You want to use a hot press watercolor paper and not a because they have a low tooth. It's a very flat, very smooth paper, which is an excellent surface for writing on and for doing watercolor. There are lots of other substrates that you can use. Like there is something called vegetable vellum or permanata, which I don't have a scrap of right now because I don't like to use it personally. I did a scroll for my friend Kelrick, who's in the Pacific Northwest on it. And it is an excellent service for calligraphy, but it is a crap service for doing like large watercolor washes because it absorbs water and just crinkles all the crap. You can also do stuff on parchment. I have a small piece here. This was made from deer by our local Scadians. They collect deer skins and scrape them and make parchment out of it, which is very cool. It can come in a number of different ways. I actually have an example that you can see how it was stretched. This is a very, very thin vellum made in a traditional way. And you can really see how like scribes used to be able to transfer designs through the vellum because you can see the design through it because it's so thin. Okay, so substrates. I think we've got all of that. Do we have any questions about substrates? Sometimes people use Bristol board also as a bottom. I don't like it myself because it is quite thick and just doesn't move the same way paper does, but some people really like it. You should experiment and figure out which one you like the best. I'm trying to find where you guys' questions are so I'm not missing anything. Hold on.
Hang on, I'm watching all three of the places that it's at, so I will send your messages to you.
Oh, I really appreciate that, Kelly. If you could just tell me, that would be ideal. Okay, so other stuff. You need paint, right? I'm using gouache paint. Gouache paint is an opaque watercolor. It comes in all kinds of different ways. You want to make sure that you're buying the watercolor version, which is usually called design gouache. I'm sorry, sweetie, I can't talk to you right now. I'm doing a class. Not right now. Please go do something else while I'm doing the class. Okay, so you want to do the design gouache. This is definitely the watercolor one. If you find ones that say acryl on them, those are not, that is not the same gouache you need. This is acrylics that blend like gouache when they're wet, but when they dry, they turn to plastic and you can't wet blend them anymore, and it's just the worst. There are lots of different brands for this. I use a lot of Turner and Winsor Newton, but you can get them everywhere. You can buy them at local shops. These are Lucas and Donarelli. This is kind of a terrible brand. Like I wouldn't buy this if I was buying for somebody. Guys, could you please be quiet? I'm trying to teach a class. Acknowledge me. Thank you. Lucas is a good brand. Also, you got your Winsor Newton, excellent brand. Winsor Newtons need to be the more expensive and the best of the best, but there's like quite a significant curve. Like most gouache is pretty good, and then you have to pay a lot more to get like a little bit of an uptick in quality. Now, I would buy like blues and stuff in a higher quality because it is difficult to get a good clean blue that has small enough pigments to spread in cheaper gouache. Okay, you also need a painter's palette or a plate or whatever to paint on. I use one of these guys. You can get them in a pack of 10 at like Hobby Lobby for, gosh, like $3. They have all kinds of fancy ones. I have this awesome one that one of my people made for me. Thank you, Mel.
That is actually, that's amazing, and I agree. So that's the messages that I have.
I love that palette. You could also get these cool ones. Like they've come out with all these different sculptural palettes now. You don't need them, but they're neat. In period, they would have used shells. I actually have these, which I use when I'm doing a miniature painting. A friend of mine, Jennifer, fished this out of the Thames, and it's exactly the kind of one that they would have used, and I just adore that. And it fits right in your hand so that you can hold and do your work. Okay, and paintbrushes. You want to use a watercolor paintbrush. Any kind of watercolor paintbrush will do. You want to try and lean towards smaller brushes and liners. My very favorite are these Zem Golden Tackle on Rounds. They are pretty dirt cheap. You can buy them anywhere on Dick Blick or on Amazon, and they are really great for at least 6 months until they start to fall apart. You can also buy, I also recommend Kolinsky sable brushes. These come in a variety of sizes, and you can get a good pack of them for about $30. So if you're trying to up your game for watercolor brushes, these are a good middle ground. And watercolor brushes, honestly, you can pay as much as you want to for them. If you want to spend like Maserati money on a watercolor brush, you totally can. And they will get better and more lovely, but it doesn't mean you need those. Okay, so we've got paint, we've got brushes, we've got paper. Oh, while we're still here, let's talk about making pigment. You can make your own paints from pigment. I bought these from the Limners Guild, and she does collections of powdered pigments that you can make into your own gouache. She also has recipes on her website for you to use to make your own gouache, which is fantastic. All right, now you need stuff to scribe with, right? So this here is what's called a pen holder. It's got a little circle in the end, and you can just take this thing, which is a nib. I think this is a speedball nib, which is the most readily available and also usually the clunkiest you can buy. I worked with these for a long time and it wasn't really a big deal. You can also buy different pen holders. I have this one as well, which has a nice cork thing on it if you're going to be writing for a long time. But this works just fine. Don't buy those glass ones. They're pretty, but they're not great. That you can not exchange nibs on them, and they are just terrible. Somewhere around here, I am missing my very favorite pen holder, which is like a hexagon thing that I bought from John Neal Bookseller, which is an excellent source for scribal gear. And it lays flat, and you can put a nib in both ends, which is fantastic. Nibs come in a variety of forms. Here are a bunch of different little ones. This one here is a Browse nib, which you can buy again at John Neal. John Neal Booksellers is a great place to get like all the scribal stuff. If you're missing anything, go over there and check them out. Browse nibs tend to be kind of stiffer than other nibs, so you need to try out ones you like and see which one works better for you. I have a very heavy hand, so I use Browse nibs, and that works for me. All right, so as we scroll down in the Google Doc, is everybody with me on the Google Doc? Maybe, maybe not. And I really like the Zoom classes better because you can get actual feedback from people in real time. What else do we need? Oh, right. Where is my ink? I forgot to get ink out. is just crazy case. Well, now you can watch me dig in my box. Ink out. Must have. It's frustrating. Okay, so the ink that you want is called Sumi Brown Bottle ink. You can buy it just about anywhere on Amazon or other. You want the non-waterproof kind because the waterproof kind has shellac mixed into it and it won't, doesn't react the same way other ink does. And it's gummy and sticks in your nibs and then you have to wash them out and it's awful. Okay. All right, so now we're going to talk about the tools that you would need to transfer to paper. You need scrap paper and blotters towels like these, paper towels you can use to block your hand. I use this illuminator's bridge, which you can see through and rest your hand on. You don't need one, but like if you have scribes in your life, if you wanted to whip out a bunch of these, it's just it's a piece of plexi with felt on the feet. They would love you forever. Excellent largesse project. Okay. I also have my very big light board here. Now, light boards are not something you have to have in your kit. They are damn useful though. So here is an old sketch that I printed out for a previous class. And I just have that as in my toolbox. And when I need to do that class again, I take the sketch out and then I put my paper on top and just trace it. You don't have to use a light table. You can use your window or your tabletop or whatever, but these things are great. They're very portable. They're flat. I just carry mine in a bag if I'm gonna go someplace. They just plug into the wall and they get hella bright all the way up to 3, and they work fantastic. Scrap table, burnishers. Okay, so gold work stuff. If you're gonna do gilding on your things, you need a couple of things. You need to have your thing you're attaching the gold to if you're doing leafing, like mini-autumn or clay bowl, or you can use PVC glue for it. You also need gold sheets, which I don't have any of at the moment because my child destroyed them. And I can't answer your questions right now. I'm teaching a class. It was your sister. Anyway, so the other tools that you would need for gold, even if you're not gilding with leaf, I highly recommend picking up a burnisher. This one is a piece of antler that my friend Jennifer gave me, and it was just lovely because it fits beautifully in your hand and you can just burnish things. Let me see if I've got where cheeses go. See on this piece, there's little bits of gold paint. And I actually used the Acryl on this. Other kinds of gold you can do. If I can find things in my mess. Okay, here it is. I used this Acryl Gouache, which you can buy from Turner. And the good thing about using an Acryl for anything is that it stays put. So it's not gonna go anyplace on you if you're trying to wet blend later. But I highly recommend these guys. This is a kit from Finetech. I think it's called something else now. Someone had told me the last time I was doing a class which one it was. It can also come in these clear kits, and you can buy the pots individually if you want to. They flow like shell gold, and they're just great. So on this thing, there's some gold pieces, and you would just take your burnisher and you can just rub on it to flatten the gold and make it more luminous. You can also use wooden burnishers, but I don't really recommend this unless you're trying. I use this for flattening paper. If I've had to take a mistake off, you can use it to flatten your paper. This is also used in sewing to put a crease in linen. You can also do this with a bone folder. This one's plastic. You can just get it on Amazon. I think it was like $2. My favorite, this one is an agate, and it is used for embroidery and also for gilding. And it's in a traditional shape, which is called a dog's tooth. And that shape is just really beautiful for getting in all the nooks and crannies when you're trying to smooth something, especially if you're doing like a raised gilding project. All right, sorry, I feel like I'm all over the place here, guys. If you have something you'd like me to go back and cover, please let me know. Are you trying to tell me things in chats, Kelly? You have something you'd like me to go back and cover? I can't hear you. Oh, I see.
Sorry, I'm apparently somehow, hang on, I'm hearing you. People are talking about the bone antler, and I have said that I could probably make those little bridges.
Oh, okay.
Is that a hint? Because that might be a hint.
No, it was not. It was not actually a hint. But you can if you want to. Okay. The antler thing, I think Jennifer got this from a pet store, actually. She was looking through stuff and she was like, oh, that would be really good for doing that thing, because you can always find tools wherever you look if your eyes are open. And Jennifer's very clever and found that for me. Okay, so we've talked about tools. We haven't talked about rulers and stuff. There's a pile of junk. Okay, this is probably the ruler I use the most. It is an old quilting ruler. Quilting rulers can be bought at any craft store. And it's fantastic because it has all the little lines when you're trying to do the lines on the scroll and stuff. And if you're doing something big, it'll cover the whole space. I also recommend you guys look into having circle templates, because you'll often find that you're using them, circles that is. And circle templates are fantastic for that. They come in many different sizes. This is my big one, and you can get smaller ones and other ones and stuff. There's also a couple of people that do 3D printed extrunsion or shield ones like this. Those guys are great. Okay, we've talked about all the tools you need. Oh, except water cups. Okay, I know this is dumb. Of course you need a water cup, but I would recommend you have 2 water cups. You want one water cup that you're gonna clean your brush in, and you want clean water to wet your paints with. If you use your dirty water to wet your paints will get muddy and gross. I get lazy about this, so my paints tend to be muddy and gross. But if you're trying to keep your color pure and you don't want it to blend with other things, you have to use clear water to add to it, because eventually the impurities in the dirty water will mess you up. And also keep your palettes and don't clean them if you want to use that color again, because gouache will re-wet and repaint for a long time. A little bit of gouache goes a very long way.
I do have a question. We have a second.
Yes.
Do you suggest French curves at all? Asks Robin.
I don't use them, but I don't see why another ruler wouldn't hurt you. French curves, for those that don't know, are used a lot in sewing, so you might have that around if you're a seamstress. And it does make a lovely curve, but it's like it only does the one thing. I don't tend to use them, but I can totally see how they would be useful.
I think I have a set. I've never used them.
Okay, so I went over everything you could possibly put into your kit. I mean, I also have silly and gorgeous things, like this is a little tiny ink pot, and this is a little tiny ink bottle that someone blew out of glass. Thank you, Mistress B and Mistress Charlie. And also little tiny pots for paint. You don't need these, but they're little and gorgeous, and you can have that. But what you really need, flat, you need a ruler, you need paper, you need sketch paper, you need gouache in red, blue, yellow, brown, white, and black. You need sketching paper, a pencil, water containers, a paintbrush, some inspiration, and ink. And that's it. You can buy all of those supplies, and I have gone through it for about $26.
We do have another question. What
Yes.
sort of water for use for your gouache?
Oh man, I'm gonna get in trouble for this because, you know, scribe people, but I just get it out of my tap. Many people like to use distilled water because they don't want to introduce anything into their gouache. And if I were painting with pigments I made myself, I would absolutely use distilled because that's a pain and you don't want to like mess it up. But as long as you are letting your gouache dry in between uses, just use the water out of your tap. Also, I argue that they wouldn't have like used closed containers to keep their gouache in to keep it wet. Some people advocate for that. They wouldn't have done that. They would have let it dry. They would have made little blobs of paint and transferred into other things. They wouldn't have kept it wet. First of all, they don't have a lot of technology to do that. And also it just doesn't make any sense. It's not really portable that way. Okay. All right, so you've got all your stuff. Now what do you do? Well, you need an idea. You need to start looking for the scribes in your community, go check out the groups, go look at things, figure out what kind of scribe you want to be, what you want to use, and how you want to represent yourself. There are a couple of books I would recommend getting. If you're interested in doing calligraphy, the Bible, the first book you should own is called Mark Drogan's Medieval Calligraphy. This book has a bunch of really great references. It'll show you where the text came from, and then it'll show you how you make the text. Here is a breakdown of the difference between Phoenician and Greek. It also has like stroke marks and shows you how to make each letter. So if you're trying to do calligraphy, this is the book you need to have. It is the one that is recommended by everyone. I absolutely also recommend it. If you're interested in Celtic art, which I understand is a lot of scrolls in the Amtgard include Celtic art. This is usually called the Black Book, but mine is brown for some reason. It is by George Bain, and it teaches methods and construction of your own zoomorphic figures and also knotwork. And it breaks it down beautifully so you can really see how it was made and how to do it. And it'll go over circles and how to make long lines and carpet pages and everything that you ever wanted to do. He does tell you where it came from, like this is from the Pictish school and stuff like that, but not always. Sometimes you have to figure out which ones came from where. It's still a really beautiful book and an excellent reference material. I highly recommend that one as well. There are also a million other books you could buy if you want to. If you're really interested in historical technique or like making your own paints or paintbrushes or stuff like that, this is the Craftsman's Handbook. It is a piece by Sinini, and it was like effectively them telling you how to do it when they did it in period. Now, this has been retranslated recently, and the new translation has a lot more information in it. Unfortunately, I didn't buy it when it was new, and now it's expensive. But I highly recommend this, especially when you're starting out. It is a free PDF you can get on the internet because it is in the common domain, whatever that's called now. But you can also buy the book for like $2. I like books. All right. So you've got your books and you've got your idea. When you get your idea and you're like, if you're using a period source, you want to really break down how it looks. What is the way that, like, here is a book on this particular portrait of Henry VIII. And it talks about how each of the pieces were lined and made, and that artist's particular method. Man, I love that piece. I want to paint that someday. And you can really look at the shading up close and how it was made. I absolutely recommend, like, here's the underpainting for this painting, so you can see exactly what the artist was doing under all that color. Pinterest is a really wonderful resource for this. If you click on that stuff and zoom in, you can really find like how they painted them and look at what techniques made that thing that is gorgeous come to be, because it's not magic. It's time and paints and brushes and figuring out where to lay them right. So the first step of designing a scroll is the cartoon. Now, when you design a scroll for someone, like talking to a client is like a whole thing. You have to talk about what they want out of the scroll and what they want included and what parts of the scroll are like standard to a particular award. These two are made, I made this one almost from this template. This is a standard English writ of title. And this is a similar one. This was the knitting scroll for my squire, Roslyn in Tal de Gore. And this one is was a treaty scroll between Avencall and Ansteora, which is my SCA kingdom. So these are cartoons. And I keep them because sometimes you do a scroll that's very similar and you've already got the work for you. Or you do the cartoon, and this is very crap papery. You can see it's gotten stuff all over it, and sometimes my children helpfully color them for me, which is lovely. Rather they do that than do it on the scrolls, which sometimes they have done. All right, so when you're designing a scroll, all the sketching, all the designing, all the layout on a piece of paper. You don't want to put marks in the watercolor paper. Sometimes it doesn't cover, or it makes like kind of the memory of the pencil mark, which will cause like gouges and paint to pull, and it disrupts the surface of the paper. And I know I sound weird right now, but I've just been doing this a long time, and I'm telling you, don't want to do sketching on your paper. You want to do it on this, and then you transfer it to the paper with your light box. Oh no. Sweetie, would you go and see what I just dropped, please? Ah, that's the wrong side. Okay, so this is a practice piece, the cartoon for a scroll I made for my squire, Kaya, who is Queen of Westmarch. And here is the scroll in progress. You can see I added more space on the outside edge here so that it can be handled and framed without touching any of the art on the inside. And you can see that I worked out where everything was going to be on the cartoon and then put it into the scroll. Is that clear, guys? Also, when they do the cartoon, it gives you a good opportunity to practice your calligraphy. This is the cartoon for Sir Watt's scroll of the Rising Winds. I actually ended up adding some more stuff over here, but whatever. He wanted a more traditional scroll, but I like put him in there and sunglasses and stuff. But because I had the cartoon, I could space and practice my calligraphy over here. Now, I didn't actually do this. This calligraphy is much prettier than mine. It's by Mistress Ellen, who I often have had the pleasure of working with. But she practiced her calligraphy in exactly the space where it would need to go on the final scroll. Under no condition should you ever do the calligraphy for a scroll for the first time on the scroll. You will absolutely make a mistake and you will be sad about it. There is no reason not to practice, even if you are the very best. Mistress Ellen might be the very best calligrapher that I know. I don't know, Peeps is in there too. And she practices every time because she's professional. Do you guys want to see a couple of other cartoons before we move on?
The answer is yes.
This one is Farrell's marriage scroll with his wife. Here he is over here, and there she is. And it's based on the same template as this one. So I was able to transfer a lot of those elements and that spacing and just have it already done for me, which was lovely. I also have, what else do I have in my bucket? Here is the cartoon for the, this was a first draft of Rivermore's Kingdom Scroll. And here is another example of the scroll and its cartoon. Here's the cartoon I used. And this is directly from a book of hours. So all this design was already done for me. I did add some things. She has a lot of cats. I eventually ended up making her a completely different scroll, but she was very patient with me about it. So this was a Pelican Skull for Mistress Cat, who is from Anciora, my SCA kingdom. And it was such a bear. Trying to figure out how that shading was going to look. Let's hold on a second. Also in here, if you want to be a calligrapher, you have to practice your calligraphy. You can find printed sheets on the internet that are lovely. I also recommend this calligraphy paper. It's not very expensive, and it's just a bunch of lines where you can do practice and keep your strokes even. If you are a calligrapher, I recommend that you practice every day. Like any art you want to improve, you should always be practicing. Always have the ability to work on it. Always have something that you're doing in the back of your mind, even if you're just writing out a sentence every day or something like that. Keep your pen moving and keep your practice active. What other fun things do I have in here? Oh, a whole bunch of paper. A scroll that I never finished. Oh, that's where that is. Okay. Sorry, guys, I got a little distracted. All right, so that talks about looking at the images, talks about the good paper. Okay, so when you transfer things to your good paper, you don't want there to be any chance of getting little smudges and crap on there. The paper is white and it tells every story of every little fingerprint you touched it with. So I recommend taping it down to a board. I use a bunch of different ones. This is a smaller one. There's for smaller pieces, you can just use a regular clipboard. But if you ever have the opportunity, I think this one was given to me. This is an artist's clipboard. Yeah, buy them for about 15 bucks. And then you can just tape your piece to that and it won't get wrinkled or creased or anything. And it'll be safe for all time. And you can move it and pick it up and put it away, and your child or your cat, which has happened to me, can't like decide to add their own flair to your piece. So when you trace it up, I recommend using guidelines on your pieces on the cartoon so that you can transfer it to the end paper. And you want to keep your hands off of it as much as you can. That's why I've got these illumination bridges. You can also use paper. And you want to make sure that your area is clean and that you're ready to like do the thing. Because if you've got like stuff on your hands or there's like dust over there, it's going to get like Murphy's Law, it's going to get on your stuff and you're going to be sad about it. And I don't want you to be sad.
I do have a question real quick. Do you have any recommendations for calligraphy for lefties?
I really wish that I had better resources for calligraphy for lefties. I do know several sinister scribes who would love to talk to you about it and how they have solved those problems. I am a righty and I'm not a very good calligrapher, so I don't have good pieces for that. Most most people that I have spoken to talk about keeping your hand elevated as you work, or talk about being careful not to drag yourself through your writing. But as not a sinister scribe, I do not have good experience with that. But I will look up some resources for you. Okay, the second stage of anything is to do the calligraphy. We talked about doing practice calligraphy on scrap paper, and oh, I forgot about the Ames guide. Okay, so this is the tool that most calligraphers, at least that I know, use. It's an Ames guide. It's about $5 on the internet, and it has a little wheel here. And what you do is you set it on top of your ruler, which is where my ruler went. And it allows you to make very finely graduated lines that are specific spaces away from each other. You use the pencil and you stick it in there and do this kinds of rides along your ruler. And then you make your lines. Okay, in my handout, it talks about using the lettering guide and adding guidelines at the right nib height. Nib height might not be familiar to a lot of people. It's the appropriate height for the letters given the nib that you're using. And some experimentation might need to take place in order for you to figure that out. But I highly recommend the experimentation, because if your letters are all smushed together because you didn't figure out how big they were going to be with the nib, sorry, this sounds weird, but like if you write something with a nib that looks like this, it is going to be wholly huge and way different than a nib that is this big. Does that make sense? I talk here about having a handy, like if you're doing a particular hand, you want to keep your exemplar or something put up on your computer or printed out, because mostly people will just fall back into their normal handwriting, or they'll get looser as they go. And you want to be reminded about the hand that you're using and how those letters are supposed to look.
I want to give you a quick heads up. I have 15 more minutes for this, so.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
I have in the handout some example texts for knighting and titles of nobility and masterhoods. The important things to include when you're writing out text are the kingdom where it's being given, the monarch who has the power to give it, the name of the person receiving it, the date, and if it affects what their name is, their name as spelled out. Everything else is extra, but you need to make sure to think about it as a legal document conferring a right or ability, if that makes sense. Okay, gilding, we talked about that earlier. Painting is the fun part for me. So I usually kind of do it first because I'm just a crap calligrapher, which is why this does not have calligraphy on it yet. You want to do your flats first, which is like the mid-tone of whatever it is you're painting. That makes it a lot easier to wet blend later. You want to apply that sort of like how you ice a cookie. If you've ever done cookie icing, you make sort of a border around the area and then you fill it in with a little bit wetter paint. You know your paint is the right consistency when you drag it along paper and it makes a very smooth, clear line. And you want to keep adding to your paint and making sure that it is smooth as you go along, because it will start to dry as you go. So having a understanding of paint viscosity as you're working is really, really important. After you've laid your flats, you can lay highlights and lowlights or white line details or whatever it is the piece calls for. Remember that painting is the beautifying of a scroll. It's the extra. Now, I absolutely have seen people do calligraphy that is just extra by itself, but it is extra. It's also conveying a thankfulness or honor to the person you're making it for. The work you're putting into it directly reflects on how you feel about their work and the work that they've done for your group. Okay, so now you've done everything. You've done the calligraphy, you've done the scroll. Your thingy looks all finished. Actually, I have a finished one here. Ha. And it's all done and you can give it to the person. At the beginning, you want to think about how things get framed and taken care of. This one has been in this frame for quite a long time. Uh-oh.
Yeah, I see your stuff is, you maybe charge your phone?
It is charging.
I don't know.
Oh, a call. Stop that. Better?
There we go. Yeah, I'll put you back.
Okay, so this was a Night of the Flame scroll for Diego of the Celestial Kingdom. One of the scrolls I did first. I borrowed it for something and I've just not been able to give it back to him. And it's been like 10 years and I'm very sorry, Diego. But, so you finished everything. The calligraphy is the way you want it. Everything is done. And now you need to erase all your extra guidelines and pencil lines and clean up anything that is there. If you've made any mistakes, you can very gently scrape them off the paper and burnish it down. Or you can add to your scroll some other detail. I think that in this peacock's tail was not supposed to be this long, but something happened and a little bit of the red in this line got over there and then I had to make it something else because it was a mess. What else? Always sign your work. You are making a piece of art in honor of someone else, but it's still your art and you should always sign your work. And you can do that on the front or on the back as you like. I usually include my name somewhere on the front of the scroll in an unobtrusive place. And then on the back of the scroll, I will include the text of the award in case it's hard to read, or in case the person who's delivering the award is holding it up like this, so they can read the text on the back. And sometimes award text looks pretty funny, like there's a scroll I did for Anatole, who's in Dragonspine, and he's a particular fan of Mongolian and Tibetan, so I did his text in that style, and you can't read it without like squinting. So I made sure to include the text on the back so that your herald can read it, and your name, and any information about like who helped you with the scroll. Did you have to translate something? Did somebody donate something to the scroll, so that that person who gets the scroll understands the work that went into it and is able to thank the appropriate people. Okay, I think that is all the information that I have today. I understand it was a little bit disjointed, and if you have any questions for me, I am available on the internet all the time, and I'm happy to take a couple questions now if you guys have any.
I will read some. I don't have one, but a comment that you should always have marginalia in it, and also your mom joke hidden somewhere in your award.
I don't usually. I actually hide Kelly in a lot of awards. I'm up to 5.
I realize I need to know about that tripod. It's being used for the phone skyscraper view. So
Which thing?
Robin about that. And Annette says thank you.
Oh. Also, look what I found. This is
what's that?
This is Sarah's Master Rose that I did.
Oh yeah. Wow.
Look, there's you.
That's not sad. Oh, there's six skellies.
Does anybody else have anything today?
Hang on, nope, I don't have any.
No one wants to talk to me about the thing.
They do. They
just
don't do it in real time.
That's fair. Hey, Kelly, could we like open a Zoom room for people to come in and chat?
Yes, but I cannot I actually have to go in right now to host the GP stuff. So, and my internet is not being able to handle.
Oh, that's fine. I'll open one and post it in the comments over there and see if anybody wants to ask questions.
If I make you host and I leave, I think I can do that. So
okay.
Why don't I stop recording and stop live stream, and I'll do that right now.